For this, I'm gonna take a flat shadow brush. Oh my gosh. Hey, thanks for clicking. Welcome back to another video. I don't know if you knew this, but Danessa Myricks actually has her own university online called Danessa Myricks University. They offer free courses and they also have some paid courses. I've been watching a lot of mixture of both of those, so I wanted to do sort of like what I've learned from her master classes so far. I took notes, so we're gonna go through today. I have the full line of everything that she used as well. We're gonna try to replicate some of her techniques because if you've ever seen her work, it is magical. It photographs so well. So yeah, I took notes. We're gonna do the whole gig and see if we could maybe get it as nice as hers. So this morning I actually watched one of her looks, which was how to get like a really fresh skin look. And we're gonna try to replicate that. So the first thing that she did was she used actually a face oil as skin prep. I have one here from Ghost Democracy and I'm gonna go ahead and apply that. She applied the oil first with a flat foundation brush and then went in with her fingers. I'm just gonna go ahead and work this into my skin using my hands. It was really interesting just seeing her tips on sort of adjusting how you're going to do the makeup based on how long it's going to wear, if it's going to be for photography or not, the model's skin type, and just like the amount of coverage needed. Just so much thought goes into it. It was really interesting. She did use an oil to prep, but like oil is such a nice base for makeup, especially if you have really dry skin. I'm a little bit more oily, but it still just makes everything blend on so beautifully. She also did a little bit of lip exfoliation and then a lip balm. Moving along, one of her techniques is focusing on the rule of three, meaning 3 tones or 3 textures to create a really dimensional makeup. What she's amazing at is just creating so much dimension within the makeup, and she does underpainting a lot, specifically with her illuminating veils, which is really interesting. So we do have 3 of the shades here. I'm going to try to replicate what I saw her do on the model. So starting off, I wrote down here, she did the illuminator with the light shade first on the highlight points of the face. So the parts of the face that you want to bring forward. I might use one of these two. So I have Paradise here, which is a little bit more purple. Then we have Starlight. Let's see what this purple one's looking like. This one is very purple. So this one has a little bit more of a blue shift and it's definitely lighter. I think I'm gonna end up mixing these two together. So I'm just mixing these to create sort of a light pink. I believe for this part she started with her fingers as well. So we're gonna start just building dimension. It is so interesting that she underpaints all with highlights. So I'm gonna start on the, it already looks so cool. Start on the high points of my face. So that's gonna be my cheekbones. She did a little bit on the chin, on the nose, also on the center of the forehead. It seems like kind of wild to put like such shimmery product all over the face, but the fact that it's underpainting, the final look came out so good. So then she went in with a sponge just to make sure that everything was blended and that there was no demarcation lines. And then she went in with her fingers again just to make sure it's really blended. She emphasized the fact that you should take your time blending 100%. I really like the fact that I mixed those 2 tones because it's creating this really dimensional type of highlight. I am so excited to see how this final look is going to photograph. I will have the photos at the end. She is such a good teacher, by the way. I'm also like a visual learner, so just seeing her apply it on the model, it was just really fun to watch and learn her techniques. So what was also really cool is she took a deeper shade of the highlight to actually put in the contour areas, which I've never heard of like any other makeup artist doing. So I have this one that's gonna be darker on my skin called Serenity, and I'm actually gonna take this on like a flat foundation brush. It has like a bit of a rose gold finish to it. And she basically placed this under the cheekbones and also on top of the cheekbones. And then she did it's like around the sides of the forehead. And then I'm gonna go back in with that sponge just to make sure that that is blended in with the other illuminator shade. We're looking very glowy. And going back in and just making sure that everything is really, really blended and seamless. I would never put this much illuminator on before foundation, but her looks are magic. So I'm gonna trust the process here. I've never tried to do this before. So she was talking about how this creates multiple points of light and dimension on the face, especially with photography. So once she had this really pretty illuminated dimensional base on, she went into the foundation with the Vision Cream covers, which I have here. I counted 5 total shades that she had on her palette. And she also had this peachy shade that she used for under the eyes. And she started with a shade that was closest to the model's skin tone, just to start to build a light layer of coverage. I have a bunch of shades here, so I'm gonna go ahead and put them on my palette and we'll see which one will match me the best. You need the smallest amount of these because they are so pigmented, but I put these shades that I have onto the palette, starting with the white shade, and then we have T01, and then we have N4, N3, and then this one over here is N1. N1 looks like it's going to be the closest match to my skin tone. So now I'm going to go in with a foundation brush, and she basically just started with a light layer of coverage, sort of just correcting the model's skin tone. So she was also talking about customizing the coverage for what is really going on with the skin. I do have a lot of redness, so that's kind of what I'm focusing on because I do have quite a lot to cover. So she did the brush and then again went in with the sponge just to pick up any of the extra product. So for oily skin, she's talking about how she does this underpainting technique a lot without any extra layers like on top of the foundation, because you can have that luminosity without adding like too much glossiness to the skin, so it wears a little bit longer. So that's sort of the technique I will be focusing on today. So after she did the just light layer of coverage, she went in to do the highlight points and then also the correction under the eyes. So for my highlight shade, I'm going to start to mix in a little bit of that white with the foundation shade we just used. I don't want to use the pure white, but I'm going to mix that in to make a nice light shade for my very fair skin. And then I'm gonna go on the highlight points. I think she used a brush for this at first. I really like applying with my fingertips. So right on tops of the cheekbones, center of the forehead, basically all those same spots that we put the illuminator to begin with. And then I'm gonna go in and blend that in with my sponge. For the under eyes, I'm gonna take a little bit of that T1, mix that in with a little bit of the foundation shade. I'm just gonna try to make like a slightly peachy color. I don't know if this is gonna work. So I just made it like a little bit warm tone, so it'll help to cancel that out. And I'm gonna start to apply this under my eyes. And then going in with my fingers again, just making sure everything is pressed in really nicely. So moving on to the contour, she dotted this on with a brush. For my contour, I'm gonna use that T01 shade, which is quite like olivey almost. And I'm going to start to dot this on. I do also have the Vision contour I might use since this is a little bit warm. She also did this sort of like triangle connection under the cheekbones, which is really interesting. It was like 2 lines almost, like one this way and then one like that. I'm gonna blend this out and then we will grab my other contour shade. When she was blending out the contour, she actually added a little drop of oil. She said just to help blend. So I'm gonna do that as well, just a little drop on my palette onto the brush. It really does help. These Vision cream colors are so full coverage. You do have quite a lot of blending time, but they can be a little bit thick. So I really get that like oil trick just to help them glide on. Another really interesting point was that, you know how they just tell you always to like blend your chin contour down? She had some upward motions when she was blending. So I was like, very interesting. I feel like the skin is already looking so nice and dimensional. This is one of the cream contours. This is the shade Light 2. I usually use the lightest one, which is like more olivey, but I feel like because we already have that more olive sort of bronzing tone, I want to use this one. Grab a smaller brush just to maybe make this one a little bit more precise. Yeah, and she did these dotting motions when applying. She said to look straight on, like at eye level, so you can make sure that everything is symmetrical. I noticed she actually like carved out the jaw quite high up as well. It wasn't like directly below. And then just using that brush that had a little bit of oil on it, we're gonna blend this in. Yeah, I actually don't use this shade of the contour a lot, but it is really nice. She also mentioned in like one of the recordings of the live masterclass that I watched that she made her makeup to be more affordable. So she was like, the packaging is never gonna be super fancy, but the product inside will be very usable and versatile basically. So I'm like, yeah, that is like totally the vibe of the products. It's like not spending a lot on packaging, but the product is really like made for makeup artists. I'm gonna go back into my sponge just to make sure. Melt it in. It's kind of the premise of like the whole skin. She was like, really take your time blending. Yeah, I was actually so worried about all the illuminator we had on, but now that we have the foundations on, like it does just give the glow through the foundation without necessarily looking sparkly. So after she had the highlight and contour, everything blended, she went in with another light layer of coverage where she felt like the model needed it. So I'm gonna do that with my sponge, just in the areas I feel like I still need to just correct some blemishes, uneven texture. And that's kind of the pro of working in these light layers, she says, is because it makes her from like doing too much at once. Like you could go back in and just add where you need it versus having one thick layer going at once. And then after this was finished, she went in with another layer of glow using her fingers this time. I think I'm just gonna use the purple one and just focus that on the high points of the face. This is so pretty. The Danessa Myricks skin is coming through. I am so excited. Like, I've heard of underpainting, but never anyone doing it with highlights. It's just so cool. Danessa is always mixing products, so I feel like it would not be right to only use one shade of highlight. So I'm gonna use that blue shade that we have as well. It's like a white with a sort of blue reflect, and we're gonna layer that on top of that more purple one. I like that she uses her fingers a lot in her makeup style because I really like applying things with my fingers as well. I feel like you just get such good control and you get to melt in the makeup. And then at this point, she went back in with the foundation and just did a layer over the eyelids for a base. She also mentioned how she bounces around from like skin to eyes, so I'm not gonna be too worried about if this is completely finished yet. And we're gonna go ahead and move on to the eyes. Okay, so for the eye look, she also mentioned the rule of 3 and sort of having the tones repeat on the face. So I want to make sure that I have like a cohesive look here. We're probably going to do some mixing. I have a bunch of color fixes here. First, she started off with the lightest shade. This is called Exposed, which is a really nice taupey shade. And these you need the smallest amount as well. Have them on my little hand palette here. And she said she sometimes will use a powder, but mostly uses these color fixes. So I'm going to take a fluffy brush, which is what she used. And then she basically just started to blend this in to create the shape of like, it was a really cool smoky eye. It was different colors in this, but we're gonna try to replicate the technique at least. What's really interesting is she actually blends her color like onto the cheek to make everything meld together in that like rule of 3 where it looks like the colors repeated on the face. So these color fixes are waterproof, but you do have a really nice work time with them, like they don't dry immediately. She also mentioned with the eyes, the working in the light layers really helps her to create a seamless look. I feel like the shade would be honestly like a really good contour on me. And this first color was like almost all the way up to the brow because it was really smoky, so we're gonna do that as well. And then she went ahead and used that same shade on the lower lash line. She also doesn't set the foundation until the end, which totally makes sense here because like I'm blending with my fingers under the eyes into the foundation, and if that was set, the texture just wouldn't be right. And then she went in with a bit of a deeper shade. I have this one called Gingerbread. I think I'm gonna mix in a little bit of this purple just because we have that slight cool hue with the highlight, and it's just so fun to mix stuff. And I wanna make that cohesive rule of 3 look really pop here. So I'm taking just a little bit of the purple, mostly that brown gingerbread shade though. And then she used that and built up the color a little bit more. There's a ton of like, call it blush draping, but like color draping in the looks where the eyeshadow comes out onto the cheek. So I'm gonna start to do that a little bit more with this more purpley color. And then she was talking about once you put on that darker shade, that original shade you have will still peek out, and that's what creates the really cool dimensionality of it. I don't know if that's a word, I made that up I think, but she also took that same shade on the lower lash line. She also didn't have the brows completely done at this point. I think she just had a brow gel and she was like, I'm gonna figure out if I'm gonna fill them in or not later on. So we're gonna leave my brows bare. I'm just working in that like shadow color onto the cheeks. Yeah, what's really cool is having that foundation not set. It's like if you make a mistake, you could easily go back in and blend things out. Next, I think I'm just gonna take a little bit more of the gingerbread shade just in its pure form because I feel like I just want to deepen this eye even further. So I'm gonna start this one on the lid. The smoky eye that she did, it was like a similar tone to this It was like these orangey warm browns almost. I really like how her like smoky eyes, like they don't ever have that harsh wing. Like her eye looks are like they literally blend into the face. It's amazing. The skin is looking so good. I'm also like really loving just the technique of blending the shadow into the cheek. I have never done anything like this before. It really is amazing that you can just continue to layer these upon themselves and they're waterproof, but they do not get patchy. Like they really are such an amazing formula for just playing around. I'm taking a little bit more of the gingerbread shade for the lower lash line. You can also use these color fixes anywhere you want. Face, lips, cheek, eyes. Very, very versatile. These are the matte ones, by the way. They have different finishes. Just blending that in. Just gonna go back in with my foundation brush. I didn't see her do this, but I just want to help blend in the shadows that we brought out over here. These tones are giving like sickly in a really cool grungy way. And now I want to do a shimmer. I'm a little bit torn between these two. Let's see what they look like. First one I have here, this is Fantasy, which is more of like a light peachy shade. And then we have Alien, which is a little bit more of gold. I think I'm actually going to go with the Alien because she talked about having the tones tie in. And this is what we used in actually like the hollows of the cheeks. And this is a very similar shade to that. So I'm hoping that'll work out. For this, I'm going to take a flat shadow brush. Oh my gosh. And just put that on the lid. It's really interesting to see these transform over the shades that we put down as well, because it's turning like a lot more purpley red than what it is in the tube, which is really cool. Yeah, we literally have like 3 layers of the Colorfix on, and you could still go in and put a shimmer on it with no issues whatsoever. Now I'm gonna go in and do a brow definition. When she did the smoky look, she said she kept the brows light because she wanted the eyes to be like the star of the face. So we're gonna go in theme with that, and I'm not gonna try to draw them on too heavy. I'm also just gonna go ahead and throw on some mascara. I'm gonna use this CoverGirl Cleantopia. So now I'm gonna start working back on the face. I have another product of hers. This is the Vision Flush. She used one of these in the blush versions. This one I have is like more of a gold highlight, so I just want to add like even more dimension. I'm gonna just build that up. These are a lot creamier versus the Illuminators, which have some more like sheerness to it. These just have a lot more body. So for my blush shade, I think I'm gonna create my own. We do have that color blended and sort of draped into the cheekbones. I'm gonna take the cinnamon shade, which I used on my eyes, and then I'm gonna mix that with my white Vision Cream cover just to make it a bit lighter, especially for my skin tone. So I made this really pretty, oh my gosh, like muted mauve. Make sure that's blended in a little bit better. I'm just gonna work that in and blend that into the shadow as well. Ooh, this is such a pretty shade. It just is all making sense now, like using the same shades that you used on your eyes, also on your cheeks. And then once we have the lip on, it really does make everything just like really cohesive looking and professional. Like you're like, ah, yeah, I intended for this makeup to look like this. Now I'm gonna take that same shade that we mixed up for blush, and I'm gonna put this on the lip. I'm actually gonna add a little bit more of that cinnamon color to it. It's really fun to do your lips with a brush. I feel like it gives you this very diffuse look versus like a lip liner and a lipstick. I'm just gonna soften it with my fingers. I like to do this with my lipstick anyway. What was so interesting is once she had this lip color painted on, she actually went back in with the model's foundation shade and put that over the lipstick. So that's what I'm gonna do now. It's like how to make your perfect nude 101. It's like having your foundation, which is your own skin tone, also on your lips. Of course, everything's gonna look really cohesive. That's genius, honestly. All right, now at this point, I think she just went back in with like finishing touches to see what needed more or to fix. I feel like I just want to do a little bit more depth in the lip, so I'm gonna go back into the gingerbread shade. It's been like the star of the show. Just want to do like a little bit more dimension and shape. My lips, like, you know, I don't have lip filler. My lips don't stick out a lot, so I want to make them pop a little bit more. All right, I feel like that's a little bit better on my lip shape. In terms of anything else, we're very glowy. I'm loving the eyes. I left my eyebrows very bare, but I feel like it goes with the look. So finally, she went in with some powders after like everything was on. Actually, I feel like I just want to blend this out my lower lash line a little bit more. I'm gonna take the blush shade and work that under there. Now for setting, she used the Evolution powder, which is a very, very fine powder, so it's not gonna like mess up the makeup in any way. This is a mini size. They do have a bigger one, but let me grab my brush. Grabbing a smaller brush, I just wanna make sure that I'm set in my more oily areas. So just on the sides of the nose, under the eyes. I'm gonna use my finger to make sure everything is really blended first, because the setting powder is like, we're locking stuff in and it's hard to go back after that. I'm really gonna avoid this like cheek area. I want that to be very glowy. And the thing about when you're using setting powder, still because we have all of that illuminator under the foundation, even when you set it down, you're still gonna get that glow to shine through. I'm gonna take some brow gel and set my brows in a very upward position. I want them to be nice and fluffy because they're quite bare. I'm also just gonna take a touch of those illuminators that we used on the face on the brow bone. And I'm also just gonna reinforce anywhere I want a little bit more glow again. Ooh, that was so pretty on the brow bone. It's gonna tie in with the highlight. I also have these Colorfix Glazes, which are basically like a gloss you can also use anywhere. I think I'm gonna put this one on called Cupcake, just a little bit to add a bit of glossiness to the lips. It's a really pretty pinky mauve color, very similar to the blush and lip shade we have on. Also just gonna take whatever's left over, blend that onto the blush. I could honestly keep going and do this makeup for like 2 more hours because it's all about layering and building, but I'm gonna stop soon, I promise. I have a feeling this makeup is gonna photograph so well. There were so many layers that we built upon, but still like a relatively natural look. Like the fact that the smoky eye blends into the cheek, the same colors on the lips, so amazing. I really hope you try these techniques out. Such beautiful products. I'm gonna go ahead and take some pictures and you will see them on the screen here. I hope they turn out really cool. They will also be on my Instagram if you don't already follow me there. You can also let me know that you're coming from YouTube over on my Instagram. I'd love to know what you think of this look, if you think I did well, and if you're gonna try any of these techniques for yourself, and if you do, definitely let me know how you like them. But yeah, the skin is glowing and dimensional. I'm so amazed that the illuminator underpainting, like I'm totally gonna adopt that, especially since I have more oily skin. It's like I want the glow, but I don't necessarily want it on top of my foundation. So cool. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.